President for the IES Raleigh section. So we are going to welcome our panelists. First, we have Glenn Edmunds. Glenn Edmunds is the President and CEO of GreenTech Solutions Group, with over 13 years focused in the lighting and controls industry. Through the advancement of new technologies and key partners, GreenTech Solutions Group LLC is committed to promoting cost-effective lighting and energy reduction solutions in commercial and industrial applications, while empowering clients with the understanding of such technologies to make the best investment decisions. Our next panelist is going to be Greg Johnson. Greg is a senior electrical designer with Loring Consulting Engineers. He has over 15 years of experience in the industry. His experience focuses on designing power distribution, lighting and controls, and fire alarm systems, predominantly for projects in healthcare and higher education. He has experience in designing hospital patient care areas, including operating rooms and various medical imaging facilities in both new construction and retrofit projects. Our next panelist is Brandon Owens. Brandon Owens is the Mid-Atlantic Territory Manager at Featurtes Service Group and currently manages the New York City and DC markets for Featurtes Service Group, where his primary clients are building engineers. Brandon has over 6 combined years in the lighting industry with a concentration on the commercial, hospitality, and residential sectors. The next panelist is myself, Catherine Hershey. I currently work for Sesco Lighting for specification sales. I enjoy consulting with architects, engineers, and lighting designers for lighting on their projects. I specialize in lighting for higher education, office and tenant spaces, healthcare, hospitality, multifamily, and biopharma industrial projects. Yeah. I'm currently, as we already said, Vice President of the IES Raleigh chapter, and I graduated from Meredith College in 2012 with a Bachelor of Science in Interior Design and Fashion Design. So we are going to touch base on quite a few topics today. We are Lighting 101, specifying lighting and controls. This is a very broad topic, so we were definitely going to hit the surface subjects of this conversation. So Brandon, would you like to go ahead and introduce the discussion?
Absolutely. So first, we're going to start off with our first question of the proposed discussion topics: how to know what lighting and controls should be specified on a project.
Yeah, and I think that's it's probably the first step in figuring out what needs to be designed. Really knowing if there's a owner preference or a facility standard that's already in place, as well as matching existing fixtures in the design. So I think really kind of the first place to start would be to talk to your customer and really just find out what facility standards are in place at the time.
Yeah, Greg, I would agree. With specifying fixtures for a specific project and understanding the client's needs and the needs of the project where you're installing the fixtures. Some important things when you're specifying fixtures is making sure that you're meeting code for the fixtures and the controls for the space. And make sure you're picking out the right fixtures for different certifications that your clients want to achieve, like LEED certification and Energy Star or the DLC listing, and we'll dive deeper into that as we further the conversation. And also, what is the design intent for the space? Those are all very critical points to look at whenever you're specifying lighting.
Yeah, for sure. If you've looking at a hospital or operating rooms, it's going to be much different from a classroom building or office building. So obviously those are simple items that we know that when we start a project we have to look into, but I think that's kind of a good step one process to starting the design.
Right.
I was going to add in reference to retrofitting and going into an application where the client is really unaware of any potential code, upcoming changes. There's a lot of kind of more of an educational process that we encounter with our clients as far as kind of bringing that knowledge to them, or at least kind of taking that path. So a lot of times the client is unaware. They're saying, well, tell me what we need and where to go. So I think there's a lot of education component in that, what I see.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good thing to bring up, Glenn, because it is, from our perspective, that's our reason for educating the client on what they need for codes or for the application.
One thing I'll add on this topic as well is really between the owner, the architect, the engineer, all the subcontractors, everybody needs to be on the same page. I can't begin to say how many projects where the architect and the engineer might be on the same page, but when it comes down to specifying fixtures and or controls for a project, the owner might be on a completely separate page, just kind of going off of what you guys were saying earlier.
Right. Yeah, and I guess to touch on that, it is important to kind of know what the existing controls and lighting are currently in place on the job, but that may not be the way we want to go in the future. Lighting is consistently evolving, and controls are getting more complex. So just because a building may have a certain control system in place, it's really talking to the owner or talking to the architect or whoever is kind of leading the project, to kind of figure out what are they looking for in the project. It may be that like Glenn's saying, the retrofitting, it may lead into more discussions to expand the project and retrofit what's currently in place to get a more modern system.
Of course. Cool. So going on to our next topic, which kind of a perfect segue, is who is selecting luminaires? Engineer, architect, owner. Subpoint is actually go ahead with who is selecting luminaires? Engineer, architect, or owner?
Yeah, and really, I mean, in my experience, that's different on every project, or even working in different sectors of the country. It feels like it might be more common for an architect to take the lead, or to hire a lighting designer versus other areas may put more focus on the engineer selecting the fixtures. And a lot of times I think it tends to be the size of the project sometimes that dictates. A very large project will oftentimes get a dedicated lighting designer to get involved. Whereas, a smaller project, normally we'll see the engineer will kind of be tasked with selecting the fixtures. And sometimes the owner may already have fixtures that they use. If it's like a small clinic or something, they just want to use what they know, that they are familiar with certain fixtures and certain controls, and they may not want to divert from what they're used to. So in some cases, actually, the owner may say, these are the fixtures and these are the controls that we want. So kind of goes back to the first point of talk to your owner, talk to your architect, kind of figure out the job. But
oftentimes what I found is more of those decorative fixtures are going to be selected by the owner. And then whether or not the engineer or the architect is specifying the remaining parts of the project, specifically let's say a high-rise commercial building, it all just depends on the type of project, really.
Yeah, a lot of time decorative, is either architect or the owner a lot of times, and the engineer for sure normally gets the back of house lighting and kind of general lighting, but architects generally have a lot of focus into front of house type fixtures and lobbies, and where the customer will see, and the lighting and controls really have a big effect on the aesthetics of a project, and so lighting designers, architects generally have a lot of input there.
Glenn, from your experience, or sorry, go ahead, Catherine.
Well, I was just going to say, yes, Absolutely. And it is like from the specifier and even the rep agency of the manufacturers to help educate the owner or the engineer architect with the best solution. Like I even had a project where the owner wanted screw-in lamps only throughout the whole space, so he didn't believe in LEDs. He's very old school. So we had a situation where it was our responsibility to educate him on integrated LEDs and driver maintenance and, the consistency of color temperatures and from a maintenance perspective and energy perspective, how important it was to go with the integrated LEDs for the overall picture. So that's always fun because sometimes the owner does have certain fixtures or requirements, and that is our part too to help guide them to the right solution.
Mm-hmm. And I think one point, no matter who specifies the fixture or picks out the fixture as a specifier, if you're an electrical designer or engineer, we should still be conscious about making sure the fixtures are appropriate. Don't just take what you're given, a cut sheet and slap it on the drawings. You want to make sure that the fixture is appropriate, the voltages are right, the drivers are right to match your controls. Do they have proper listings? Sometimes, you may get cut sheets from people that, they look pretty, but then you look at them and they have no listings. The voltage is
Right.
European. Maybe they're from a website that somebody just Google searched. So in those cases, we just want to make sure that we're aware of what's in there and advise appropriately. Especially these days with availability and lead time of fixtures. Just because you can find it on Google doesn't mean it's easy to obtain.
Right. Or if it's UL listed.
Right. Yeah.
Glenn, in your experience, do you have any comment on this question?
Well, I would, in most cases, what we're working with, again, we're engaging in our clients and coming in on a design build turnkey type application. So I would say probably 90% of our personal work is bringing in best options, best strategies. So, but we do encounter where working with a spec project where, there's an architect involved or lighting reps already designed that system. But that's really, our experience is, again, I would think just researching and putting together the correct options for that client per that application. Light levels are very important, color renditions and so forth. So, but yeah, that's about all on that topic, really, for our experience.
Catherine and Greg, I don't know if you'd agree. In my distribution days, really, it just came down to once you figure out the electrical technicalities, just finding out as far meeting the owner's goals of fit, form, and function. Of course, cost is associated there as well. But you guys have a great point as far as meeting all the electrical technicalities of the project as well. Cool. So on to the next question is, what is the need and function for this space and to provide appropriate luminaires?
Yeah.
Just
and
a
Glenn
great
kind of touched on
segue.
that a bit with
Okay.
like color temperatures and things like that, lumen levels. So, I think that's, for me, that's a very important part because it can really change the mood of a space or, really the function. So, the color temperature can, warm color temperature will help kind of produce a calm feeling, and cooler color temperatures kind of help with concentration and tasks, keeping on task. So, really not just applying a color temperature across the board, really thinking through your, the spaces within your project and tailoring selections to that. And photometrics are important to make sure you're lighting the space properly, whether it's underlit or overlit. I know, Glenn, I think we discussed that you have a lot of projects where you come back in after the fact and kind of correct projects that were not properly lit. So, getting that right the first time is pretty important, not just meeting watts per square foot or, budget concerns or whatever, make sure that you're kind of doing your due diligence up front and running photometrics to get the right fixture in there and not just relying on dimming or, things like that.
Speaking of color temperature, Greg, I saw a couple years ago at Light Fair where a specific manufacturer did a study between color temperatures in relation to a football team, actually. So beginning of the game, they would start off with a very cool light, get, energy levels moving and such. Halftime, they would bring it down to the 35,000 Kelvin range. And then right before halftime, bump it up to that white temperature, and then subsequently after bumping it back down to those warmer levels. So I think there's something to be said as far as that is concerned with color temperatures, moods, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Color tuning and BIOS lighting or human-centric lighting, that's a whole nother animal to get into. But yes, it is very important in a space. One thing I wanted to touch base on too, just making sure, when you're specifying the fixtures, like we kind of touched base on this earlier, to make sure that your fixtures UL listed or ETL approved. A lot of decorative fixtures will fall in this category where they're not UL listed or ETL approved. Especially European fixtures, we fall into the same category. So it's always important when you're specifying the fixtures to do your due diligence to make sure that they meet the appropriate certifications. Something else to keep in mind whenever you're verifying the fixtures and the quality and the driver selection. One thing that also goes into that is the LED chips too. You want to make sure you're specifying reputable manufacturers that have a 2 to 3 step binning process. You don't want to have 3,500K with different manufacturers, and then you see a slight hint of a different color temp in the same open space, right? Sometimes you can get away with that when you have enclosed rooms versus like an open office setting with multiple different manufacturers. One thing to help narrow that down too is maybe selecting one manufacturer that's going to have all of the same LED chips. But usually if you are selecting reputable manufacturers that go within that 2-step, 3-step binning process, you should be pretty safe with that. And then color rendering index is also very important whenever you're looking at the fixtures, whether you're going to do an 80 CRI or a 90 CRI. You don't want to have like a beautiful oak table in a conference room with a blue hue to the light, because that's just not going to complement the space. So usually if you go with more warmer tones, you want to go with the 90 CRI. So that's also something to consider when you're selecting the light fixtures. And then the drivers are very important as well, so I've actually had a project where they selected a DMX driver, but didn't have the appropriate controls for that fixture to function the DMX driver. So it's really important too to look when you're specifying a fixture, what drivers do they offer? Are they compatible with the controls that I need for the space? If you're selecting DMX, make sure you have the proper controls to power a DMX drive fixture versus a 0 to 10 volt driver. So there are just some key factors that always think about whenever you're picking the fixtures for the space.
Wonderful. All right. So next question is, what is the budget? Specify luminaires and control that meet the needs of the budget. Avoid VE processing during construction by designing the right luminaire/systems from the start. So question one here would be, how do specifiers know/find out distributor net pricing on luminaire and controls?
I'm happy to touch base on this. Yeah. So this is actually where I come into play and utilize, your specification reps as resources. We all know, especially if we're designing the jobs, how important the budget is up front, because the last thing you want is to have the project VE'd after you've done all the research on the fixtures and selected what you needed. But as we know, it happens quite often. So your specification reps can give you budget pricing up front, and they try to give you a good budget quote that will meet the budget and the client's needs. So make sure you use your specification rep for that. Also going into lead times, because lead times are also a big discussion with the budget. And that is something that the specification rep can find out as well. Now, the tricky thing with lead times in the design process, yes, we can figure out a general lead time, but we all know when we finally place that order, if someone just placed an order for 300 of those fixtures, that may change the lead time, but it is good to know. Usually they can kind of broadcast what kind of lead times you're looking at for the manufacturers. So that's also an important thing to look at. And these days after COVID times, everyone's having lead time issues, but they are improving every day.
So we're going to see, but Catherine and Glenn, are you guys seeing the lead times issues getting a lot better lately and improving more so than they were a year or two ago, where it just seemed like everything that we specified had a substitution because what we put on our plans is not available kind of across the board. So
Right.
It seems like it's getting better, but see what you guys think.
As far as our experience, what we've seen with the manufacturer that we work with, it seems like that is improved greatly over the last 3 to 4 months. So I'm not seeing as much restraints on receiving product in a timely manner. I see on the same topic on this question as we're mentioned about quality of products, and this I see a warranty and customer service, and I will comment on that is how that has become a huge part of our selection of manufacturers that we work with. And I think that comes with just historic experience and working with this company or that company. And when we do see issues and they do occur in the LED market, that quick turnaround or that customer support has won a lot of our business just because of that responsiveness and quickness. So I would say very weird. We've installed. We do a lot of subcontract work with other vendors and so forth, where we're just a implementer or labor component, and we've installed questionable product for other contractors that tend to have a tremendous amount of failure rates and so forth. So I would say just do a little due diligence on that type of selection of product.
Yeah, and is there kind of anything that you guys see, maybe Catherine, that would help specifiers to better select fixtures up front, or what's the best method? Is it just talking to your sales reps to kind of see what's going on and what the recommendations are, and not just kind of relying on I think like Glenn was saying, past experience with manufacturers and fixtures is great. It's a good way to kind of build like a basis of fixtures that and you trust, and you've seen work in the projects and they work very well. But you also don't want to just kind of continue to copy and paste the same fixture onto jobs. So I think kind of talking to your reps, seeing what's out there, what's the latest products, what's available. But if there's anything, other recommendations that you have, Catherine, might be valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is our job, to provide that information for you guys, because 1 month it may be a certain manufacturer has a long extended lead time, and then that's caught up, and then the next month it could be another extended lead time. So that is the specification reps' responsibility to advise you guys on the fixtures, what are in stock. Some manufacturers have a reputation of a 10-week lead time, or 10-day, 7-day quick ship, 4 to 6 weeks standard, which could become 9 to 12, depending on what it is, so it all depends on the manufacturer. And that is where you can utilize your specification rep to get those lead times and which manufacturers have the 7-day quick ship, have the 10-day quick ship for standard products, which ones are warehoused locally. So they get, once a PO is placed, they could be delivered in 48 hours to the project site. So yes, that is the specification rep's duty to make sure they're advising you of the best solutions.
But do you think it's still kind of relevant if you see on a cut sheet that they have quick ship listed on there, that's still accurate? I mean, without
that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, it depends. Some manufacturers, they are a little bit behind. And then there are some of our manufacturers that have held to that standard. And honestly, it all depends on which manufacturer you're looking at. And that would be more specific for what you're looking at for your project. But yes, it is always good to ask the question. If you are seeing the 7-day, 10-day quick ship, it's good to ask your rep to make sure that they are staying true to that before you specify it, if lead time is a major issue. We all have projects where we know it's not going to be ordered until the end of the year, or sometimes the project has a quick turnaround and it's going to happen in 2 to 3 months, right? So it also depends on that project scope, because if you, at the time when you're specifying fixtures, if you know it's not going to happen for another 2 years before a PO is placed, things change dramatically by that time. So also, you got to consider that as well.
Of course.
I want to make just an observation. Again, I was reading through some of the notes that the group had put together on each question, and in reference to DLC and Energy Star compliance. So it was on the question before. I will say that sometimes we'll see researching products and we see cut sheets, and the cut sheets is stating DLC or so forth. We've had this happen a few times where certain configurations of that fixture is not DLC listed. So I know we've kind of adopted double checking through DLC listings and making sure that the part number that we're, especially on large quantity projects where rebates are included or being applied for, that we can make sure that that product is currently listed. So I know that's just something just to add.
Yeah, that's a great point. Just because you see the logo there, some fixtures might have 50 different variations. There might be certain options that get selected that are no longer Energy Star compliant or DLC compliant. So yeah, that's a great point to check that. You don't want to find that out after they're installed, that and the owner is expecting a rebate, that they can't get the rebate for various reasons. So.
Certainly. Next question is going to be single line spec or 3 equal spec on lighting luminaire schedule. When and why to use 3 equals?
Yeah, and really a lot of that comes down to, if it's a public job, there may be requirements from the state that require you to have at least 3 equals just to kind of even out the playing field. Or it may be that if it's a private job, you can get by with a single line item spec and just have everything by one manufacturer as your basis of design. But, I think there's also sometimes where, it may be good to go ahead and do a 3-line spec, even if it's not a public job, just because it helps to, kind of give, I think, the owner, better pricing. It gives more competition. Whereas if you just have one manufacturer listed for everything, it doesn't really necessarily give them reasons to sharpen their pencils quite as much. You may still get the contractor will try to introduce VE options to you, or they may just go off the lighting fixture schedule and give you exactly what you asked for, which sometimes there's nice parts with that as well, especially if you've spent a lot of time and effort to select the fixtures. But I've done it both ways in my past, where some projects we just have the single line spec, and still kind of open it up to alternates can be proposed, and just make sure that they're submitted to the engineer for review and approval. And we'll get the fixtures to submitted for our review. We just need to make sure they are equal to what we designed. But But you know, I know Catherine deals with this a lot, I'm sure.
I
And
do.
you know, I
Yeah.
think it's really a big topic, probably more so than we would get into too many details here today. But you know, I think
Yeah.
there's also a lot of danger in having a 3-line spec, and you know, with if the fixtures aren't equal, it can kind of throw off packages and maybe give certain companies more of an advantage or make it tougher for somebody else. You know, particularly if there's certain fixtures that don't have an equal, to make sure to include separate bid light items, and you know, certain ways to protect yourself and the owner, to make sure they're getting the best price and the best value. And Catherine, I know you deal with this probably on a daily basis.
Yeah, and that was a great broad description of that, Greg. And yes, I do. I deal with this on a daily basis. And what Greg was saying with public bids in the state of North Carolina, we have GS 133, where you have to list your 3 equals on the fixture schedule for each fixture type. So it's a competitive bid for the owner. And then to further touch base on what Greg was saying, it is helpful if you want it. I know a lot of specifiers do it differently. And you do want to use caution whenever you're listing 3 manufacturers and you're not putting a part number, right? You have the basis of design part number, and then you may list Hubble or Lithonia or whatever, to be more specific. But without having that part number, that does kind of open it to where it's not a competitive bid, where someone may put a more of a VE fixture in place of the basis of design, and the basis of design could hold a higher number. So it is important to do your research, your due diligence, to make sure that whatever you are putting on the fixture set schedule, if you're not putting part numbers with your equals, that could be making it non-competitive by not doing your research to make sure that it is appropriate to the basis of design. And with private money, something to note, you know, on private jobs where you only have to list 1 manufacturer, especially if you're working with 1 specification rep, if it does need to be value engineered or VE'd, you can always go back to that rep and get a VE quote, you know, or try to find a VE fixture. But if you want to start that process up front during the bidding, you can go ahead and list multiple manufacturers on the project to give the client a competitive bid up front. But yeah, it's very important when you're specifying the fixture is to make sure it is a true equal to the basis of design and matches. And this is also where writing the spec is really important. And the tighter you write that spec, you give all the descriptions for the performance, that's going to be the best way to acknowledge whether your equal is an actual equal to the fixture.
Perfect. So speaking of that tight spec, Catherine, next question would be, what are the dangers and issues that arise when the job is bidding and the spec is holding and getting the best pricing for the owner?
Right. And recircling around that goes into exactly what I was saying, you know, with the fixtures, to make sure that your client's getting the best price, just making sure that you actually put true equals on the fixture schedule to make sure they're getting that competitive bid.
Yeah, that can be kind of tough on our side too, because
Yeah.
you know, sometimes spec sheets can be misleading, and you know, from the design side, a lot of times we don't get pricing, you know, when we get a cut sheet. There's no website you can go to and get accurate pricing. So it's really kind of hard to see. So, you know, from our side, we can, you know, look at the construction of the fixture and the performance and the warranty. And, you know, there's a lot of aspects that we can compare. But, you know, one thing, if you're going to do 3 equals or have a public job, you know, you probably should develop your lighting fixture schedule of what you're looking for. And then you can send that fixture schedule to multiple reps and get them to, you know, maybe you develop a basis of design to start with, and then send it to multiple reps to get their equal fixtures. But you still have to kind of review everything. Don't just take what they give you, because, you know, most people are trustworthy, and, you know, you can trust, and we rely on them heavily to be honest with us. But, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that somebody can't say, oh yeah, this is equal and it's half the price, you know. So yeah, it's kind of tough to make sure that those are equal, you know, in performance, construction, and value. yeah, it's not easy.
Mhm.
Right.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
We'll quickly touch on this one. It's the last of this section. Can bad equal selections throw off bid packages or give unfair advantages to one of the reps slash distributors to win the job?
Yeah, it definitely can. And, from my past, I think the best thing that maybe you can do is if you have like a certain decorative fixture, or maybe it's a street lamp or something that's like specific to that client. They say we have to have this fixture. There's going to be somebody that reps that fixture. So if you say no equals there, it might make some funky things go on with the package pricing and all that. So you can separate out and do like a separate bid light item for particular fixtures, kind of break them out of the general lighting fixture schedule. That's kind of been my experience with it, to get that special fixture price separately. So then, the rest of it can still be on that, like the 3 equal list. And is that something, Catherine, that you have anything that from your experience to add to, like, what should people be aware of, or
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that does come up often. Like there are facilities where it's the standard, right? The owner may have a preference and they want these exit signs or this, emergency lighting, and this is what we have to have. So it does help if you do like an add alternate at the end of the fixture schedule. That's one way to add it. And that way that still gives your client or the owner a competitive bid on the project.
Cool. All right. So moving along, question number 6 is, have either of you, any of the panelists, seen an instance where a project is over designed and over complicated, whether it be lighting controls or lighting fixture selections? Owners tend to like simple systems that they can easily learn to use and maintain properly.
I would comment on when integrating lighting controls, is very important to understand the strategy or the goals of that client. 10, I would agree, is to keep it kind of simple for that for the client that is not assigning somebody, or again, some of the more higher end controls and build management integration. It takes a little bit of time and so forth. And we've seen where certain systems aren't even being utilized to their fullest because there's no interaction. There's no one that understands it. So I would say definitely learn from the client what their strategy is, if that's a path they want to take to have more flexibility and detailed controls, or just more of a fixture level, program it and let it be type scenario. But,
I can certainly comment on that as well, where we have a couple of projects where the workhorse system that we usually work with, they tend to think of it as overkill. So instead, we're going to use wireless solutions in, let's say, office rooms, classrooms, conference rooms, so on and so forth. Very easy to install systems, easy to program, so on and so forth, so as not to over design or over complicate the lighting control system.
Yeah, and I think it's, especially with energy codes that are constantly evolving and constantly getting more stringent, it can be difficult sometimes that, it seems like people, do tend to like simple, but what we could do 15 years ago, we really can't do anymore and meet energy codes. Particularly, every city and every state can be different. So, working in New York City may be a lot more stringent than, working in a small town in North Carolina or something that, may not adopt as many of the strict codes. So knowing your codes, at the end of the day, we have to comply and make it code compliant, but, doing our best to try to keep it a simple system where maybe they don't have to call, the manufacturer to come and reprogram their system every time they want to make a change or something. And, it seems like systems are getting a lot more user friendly, with apps on their phone that can tie into these network and distributed lighting controls to allow the user to adjust their time clock and not have to call, their manufacturer installer to come and, change the time clock for them. So I think that's great that, the industry is kind of getting more simplified in those controls while also offering a lot more complexity to the system.
Of course.
But yeah, that's kind of the balancing act, is how to make sure the client's happy in the end, but meeting all the codes.
Right. So we'll quickly touch on this this next question: color temperature selection. Are any of you seeing any changes in CCT trends, specifically in regards to space, and what is the ideal function for that space? Essentially, what we're looking for is ensuring consistent color temperatures.
Yeah, I mean, I think normally consistency is good. There's times where highlighting something specific, like Catherine was saying, a nice, oak table or something, you might want to have like a warmer color temperature, bring out the, the colors in it and make it the contrast and make it pop. But just as general lighting overall, you want to make sure that, you keep in a consistent color temperature, but there's no just one answer for that. So, a project may have specific needs to, and know your space. It's not just one color temperature across the board. If you, maybe common areas, corridors would have one color temperature, and maybe patient rooms or a cafeteria or classrooms would have different color temperatures. And, I guess, as we continue to develop with the technology, we probably see more of the color shifting getting implemented as prices come down. I don't know, Catherine, do you see that a lot?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Color tuning and human-centric lighting is definitely becoming a more common conversation that everyone's having. But to touch base on the consistent color temperature, Greg, that was a good point too. Your space may be more specific, where you may need a different color temperature in an exam room, and higher foot candles even, depending on that space. But also keeping that color temperature is consistent. You don't want to have a 3000K, 3500, 4000K in one space. It just doesn't blend well. And one thing I would like to point out, the interior lighting and the exterior lighting, if you're building a space where there's a lot of windows and it's a very open building or an open space, and you have 3000K for your interior lighting, but then your exterior is 4000K, it really does not complement each other, so always try to keep that in mind too, when you're designing a space, and you can see the exterior lighting blending with the interior lighting at night specifically. It's really like a sore thumb. So you always want to try to keep that consistent. But yes, color tuning is and human-centric lighting is starting to become a big subject, and we have a lot of questions on that. Typically, it depends on the project and the parameters of the project, if it sticks, whether it's in the budget, and how important is it to the owner or the client to have the human-centric lighting in their space. And we've had quite a few projects where that has, been approved and actually made it on the job. But that's definitely something in North Carolina that has been a slower transition compared to the rest of the United States.
I don't know if this is a question next, but I'm just going to go ahead and read it. So it's question 8, run photometric calcs to make sure selection is correct, even if selected by others. The subpoint is in regards to, Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say with that one, we kind of touched base a little bit earlier on that. I probably jumped out of order of our notes to keep us on track. But I just think it's, as a specifier, it can be important to run your calculations, even if you're not selecting the fixture, just to make sure, because you don't really know exactly who developed the fixture. If they just, provided, got you a cut sheet on a fixture that they thought looks good. There's a lot more to it, like the lumen package and all that, and ceiling heights and finishes, and just a lot of stuff to keep in mind. So just as a specifier, I'd say, even whether you're picking the fixture yourself or you're given the fixture, find a way to run photometric calcs. Sometimes you can use your reps sometimes they'll help you out with calculations if you're nice to them. But or you can have programs to run it yourself. But I just think it's for lighting a space correctly. It's an important aspect. But.
It is definitely important, and to touch base on that too, with specifiers, if they're picking fixtures that have screw-in lamps instead of integrated LEDs, there's no way to run IES, photometrics on that. So keep that in mind too, when you're looking at specifically decorative fixtures. You got to make sure you have supplemental lighting. If it's just an ambient fixture, or if it doesn't deliver the lumens that you need, the engineer needs to make sure that they're adding supplemental lighting to the space to make sure it's lit appropriately.
Awesome. Next question is going to be regarding LED flat panels. Question is they're becoming increasingly popular for general lighting and back of house. They're cheap, they're high performing, flexible, thin profile, readily available, selectable CCT, and many owners and facilities have been requesting these. What are the reps / design build contractors seeing used the most? LED troffers or flat panels?
Well, our experience, the LED panels have been widely used for a good while now, and
Agreed.
And but as far as the question of between troffers and panels, I think it goes into application. Again, if it's more of a higher end office, or maybe just the need for a little aesthetically, that a troffer might look better than a flat panel. And then again, it becomes choice of the client. Sometimes we'll show them both and let them make a selection. I know we in the breakout when we were talking about the topics, I made a suggestion, or just made a statement, that a lot of applications, when we get into large multi-story buildings and so forth, we're starting to tend to use the LED panels and troffer retrofit kits instead of the full fixture replacements. And that's due to the construction cost and opening up that ceiling and so forth. So that's something that we do with certain projects that may tend to be a little bit more sensitive on that construction cost, to use a retrofit panel or troffer.
Yeah, and like you're saying, a lot of times, for aesthetic purposes, sometimes a troffer can, look a bit nicer. It's all opinion based, I guess. Some people may like the flat panels, but there's definitely a budgetary benefit to the flat panels, and I think I feel like I've seen more of them getting requested and used by even like facility directors, that they like it because they're easy to get, cheap. Sometimes they have selectable color temperatures. So for them, it maybe makes sense to put them more in like back of house type areas, maybe outside of customer view. But I've just noticed increasing number of facilities actually come out and request that and say, this is the fixture we want for back of house areas, or just general areas. So more so than maybe in the past, we used them when we had ceiling constraints, and needed that really thin profile. Now it seems like they're getting used a bit more commonly in, some of the projects I've worked on.
Right. Catherine, any comment?
Oh, sorry, Glenn, were you going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to add, talking about the use of it, and I was going to just make a comment too. We're seeing in the last few years, a lot of the panels from certain manufacturers are now coming sensor ready. So it becomes a very simple integration to add a sensor, a plug and play type scenario with the network controls and aspects of that. So it's which we're seeing that across the board on a lot of the commodity type level products that are all sensor ready. So now we can do integration with third party sensory and so forth and platforms.
So perfect segue with that is, sorry, Greg, you have anything to say?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. You're probably leading into what I was going to say. So just talking about fixtures with integrated controls.
Exactly.
Glenn was leading into, a lot of them have that option, and, just knowing when is the what is the right space to use those in, if it's at each individual fixture. Is it most beneficial in like a single occupant office with 1 2x4? If you start getting multiple fixtures in a space, is it beneficial to use integral sensors versus, more of a traditional system with like a wall sensor or ceiling sensor? I guess kind of knowing your space. Maybe Catherine, are you seeing a lot of people specify integral aux sensors in a lot of spaces? Or?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a mix and it comes down to preference, right? With wired systems, it depends on what you're trying to do with the space. With the integrated sensors and the fixtures, it's definitely beneficial, like you were saying, in a single office space or even in an open office space, it could work. From a commissioning level, there is a lot more commissioning that goes into these integrated sensors because they have to go and program each individual fixture. Versus a wired system where it is the room controller and the switch, but it also depends on the space that you're designing for and what are the requirements, what is easier to use in the space.
And Glenn, I'll throw this back to you. What are the most where are they the most beneficial, and what cost savings? Are there any drawbacks to luminaires with integrated controls in your experience?
Well, again, some of the product lines that we're working with, they're already integrated. So the part number has the ability to add either a controller or a sensor or whatever module unit that you would want to plug into that. So we see an advantage a lot of time. When I say a lot of times, but what we're starting to see is we're getting into certain applications, budgetary reasons. They don't want to add in these at this time, but the fixtures are already capable of adding them later on. And we've done a few where a couple of years later we're going back and it's a second project for them to add the controls. But I guess I would think more of the question about drawbacks would be if you were paying an adder or add-on cost for a fixture, that you weren't utilizing that capability. I mean, I would think that would be a disadvantage of the budgetary cost. But again, I think per application, clients, it's just an array of applications that you may use it in certain instances and others you don't. That's about that on.
I know we're running a little close on time here. Maybe just kind of round up a little bit. Yeah, speaking of controls and stuff, Brandon, like you're pretty heavy into the controls as far as like energy reporting and different function of control systems these days. Are you seeing this implemented a lot? Or
energy reporting, it really comes down to whether we're talking about measured reporting or calculated reporting. So measured reporting is going to be involving installing meters and measures in a space. The pros of this are it's very accurate, but the cons are it's expensive and hard to install. What we're seeing is a move to more software centric platforms where you tell each circuit, switch leg, and lighting zone how much energy to use, and a detailed energy report is generated. So the pros of this is it's much less expensive and there's little to new hardware, and the cons are it's less accurate. So the calculated report is definitely more useful for energy trends like week to week, month to month, and year over year. That's kind of what we're seeing as far as platforms are concerned and the available benefits. Certainly the various manufacturers offer different reporting metrics on their platforms. All of them really share three things, and it's cost reduction, return on investment, and enhanced well-being and productivity. And then furthermore, as far as what items can be reported, there's certainly energy consumption, which is going to be the kilowatts consumed and saved, is often available with most manufacturers. This helps engineers and facility directors fully understand their current consumption and how they can improve. Next is space utilization. So most manufacturers offer this to their customers. It's common to be able to view occupancy or vacancy data by room, area, or the entire system. This actionable data is extremely valuable for facility personnel as it offers a wide range of options for setting scenes and schedules, which further assist in helping save on total energy consumption. And then the segue to that is setting scenes and schedules is now more accessible for facility personnel, given the current controls platforms technologies offered by various manufacturers. This energy consumption data helps them make better decisions overall on their total energy consumption.
Yeah, and I guess, with this, probably if you have like a lead project, you may have to do some energy reporting as part of like a lead process, but also as energy codes continue to evolve, is this something we think is going to start working its way into energy codes to have requirements for energy reporting?
Absolutely. So what we're seeing, for instance, is in one of my territories in New York City is local law 88 is pushing by January 1st, 2025, all commercial and residential buildings over 25,000 square feet are required to at least submit a report to the New York City government on how they're making progress of upgrading their fluorescent fixtures to LED. With that being said, they're also going to have to look at their lighting control systems. So with that being said, I've met with enough people where they initially ask, what energy metrics can I report back, especially energy managers at, let's say, bigger corporations and especially colleges. I need certain energy metrics to report back to my facilities, engineering, and executive management teams because they're, with the green wave, they're very much keeping a close eye on this. And really what it comes down to is this is all being driven by energy codes. They, like you said earlier, they are different in each city. Certainly in New York City, it is, you have local law 88 and local law 99 that are driving pretty much the whole city into a scramble at this point.
I want to thank everyone again for joining us today. We're thankful for all of our continuing members and your participation in today's webinar. So make sure you keep an eye out for your email to sign up for our next educational webinar in March. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.